call the October meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is to approve the September 9th minutes. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I'll support. Second, thank you. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Hearing no opposition, we will approve the minutes of the September meeting. Our next board meeting will be November 4th at IMCC on the east side of the state. I guess we will ask Nick Lamb for the welcome.
Distinguished members of the Board of Corrections, Deputy Director Gibbs, and other guests not mentioned, but who are in attendance, welcome to North Central Correctional Center. My name is Nick Lamb. I'm the warden here at Fort Dodge, or North Central Correctional Center and Fort Dodge Correctional Center. My fellow team members and incarcerated individuals here at North Central Correctional Facility are honored and grateful to be hosting this month's Board of Corrections meeting. Almost a year and a half ago, I was blessed and honored to be named the warden of both Fort Dodge and North Central Correctional Facilities. In that time, I have met and gotten to know many dedicated staff and incarcerated individuals. I've also gotten to know many stakeholders from the local communities, as well as members of incarcerated individuals that have great interest in both facilities. Today's current population at Fort Dodge Correctional Center is 1,181 with 242 staff. At North Central, we have 462 as of this morning with 90 staff. The Fort Dodge and North Central Correctional Facilities are fortunate to have a strong relationship with many different stakeholders in the community. One of those is Iowa Central Community College and also the district. Fort Dodge and North Central Correctional Facilities are honored by Iowa Central Community College to have the blessed, currently the second chance Pell Grant. I'm trying to say it right, sorry. Currently, Fort Dodge has 75 incarcerated individuals, either in the Associate of Arts degree program or in a certification program like welding, carpentry, with 14 incarcerated individuals expected to graduate this school year. Currently, North Central has 28 incarcerated individuals in the Associate of Arts program and 2 projected to graduate this school year. Between Fort Dodge and North Central Correctional Facilities, we have had 446 incarcerated individuals thus far graduate from with either associate degree in arts or a certification in numerous other titles such as accounting, carpentry, culinary, baking, supply chain management, welding, and industrial machinists. Here shortly after I'm done with my spill, I'll give an opportunity to Mr. Jesse Ulrich to give a little more in depth about the program, the Pell Grant. Other treatment programs that we offer at Fort Dodge are Achieving Change, through value-based behavior, more recognition for clarity, Prime of Life, Tech to Connect, which we've been blessed and fortunate to have through the district. This is basically a program where the offenders get a tablet and they can basically get a jump start on their parole working through the district. Education-wise, we offer HISET, Serve Safe, Life Skills, numerous literacy programs, apprenticeship programs. We currently have at Fort Dodge are a plumbing and electrician, and we are looking at adding a barbership apprenticeship program hopefully here in the near future, kind of like here at North Central. North Central offers programs Achieving Change through value-based behavior, healthy Iowa relationships education, moral recognition theory, or MIT trauma, Prime for Life, rest, relaxation, exercise, and sleep techniques. The Education Department offers HISET. Iowa Central Community College also offers certifications in industrial safety, pesticide applicator testing, Serve Safe testing, life skills, and other literacy programs. Employment classes like POETS, National Career Readiness Certification Testing. Apprenticeship programs offered here at North Central are barber, cooks, electrician, electrostatic powder coating tech, fabricator, housekeeper, office manager, and screen printer and welding. We have many self-help groups. We also allow our offenders that are incarcerated individuals to have. At Fort Dodge, we have lifers groups, Toastmasters, YMAP, Growth, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, 180 Miracles, Veterans Groups, Spanish Groups, and Humans. Here at North Center, we offer Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Pathways programs, Toastmasters, lifers, move classes, celebrate recovery, and veterans groups. Jobs we offer at both facilities. At Fort Dodge, we work with IPI. Besides the regular jobs we have around the facility, such as sanitation and dietary, we also offer balloons, where balloons come in bulk and they're folded, just like Mount Pleasant. And also over here, we make uniform pants for staff. We also do Braille and numerous other small jobs for IPI. Like during COVID, we did a lot of medical health supplies. Here we're in North Central, we do balloons. We have 15 different sites, landed sites where offenders are picked up and they go to mostly grain bins and they work off-site. Tree farm, landfill, we also do work back in IPI for Avapco, that make the big air conditioners, and also Scranton Manufacturing that makes parts for garbage trucks. Besides that, our future plans of both facilities are expand vocational training areas, like adding the barbershop program, the program I had in Illinois that worked out very well. A lot of incarcerated individuals were interested in that. We'd like to expand in vocational training areas that are mostly in the private sector, like areas like maybe truck driving or heavy equipment, solar panels, maybe electric engines, more welding programs, stuff like that. Basically just expand IPI jobs expansion. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Kirsten if you'd like to come up and give a couple more words for my inaccuracies as to what students and what programs we got.
No, you did really good. You did really good. Thank you. Well, good morning, and my name is Jesse Ark. I have the privilege of being the president at Iowa Central Community College, and I hope you recognize this is something really, really special here. Not just only was Iowa Central one of the first in the state of Iowa for Second Chance Pell, but we were one of the first in the nation, being one of the first 60 community colleges across the nation to be able to offer Second Chance Pell. And the success of the program continues to build every year. We appreciate all of the wardens, especially the Warden Lamb that we work with across the state of Iowa. But if you haven't been to a graduation, you don't really fully understand the impact that this program has on our students until you see the end result. Our goal for any student is to come to Iowa Central, finish their degrees and certification in the shortest amount of time possible, with the least amount of student loan debt, so that they can have a better life. Our inmates have a very different perspective on that last piece about having a better life once they are reintegrated back into society. And it's interesting looking at the numbers. They have a full percentage GPA higher than a normal student on our regular campuses. We like to think that they have a little extra time to study than our other students. But it is also because they're a lot more motivated. And the really inspirational part about the graduation piece, though, is when you're at graduation and they're in their gowns, they recognize that they're not wearing gray, they're not wearing their blue, they're not wearing their orange. They're a graduate, just like any other student, that would be walking across that stage and reintegrating back into society. We've had success stories from manufacturers who have actually petitioned parole boards to have the inmates released on time, so that they're a great worker because they're such a great worker. And I think in the state of Iowa, we're also a success story because we're all battling for people, right? We need more workers. We need, and these programs that we're offering are helping those workers be able to have that step up when they get out and back into their communities. It's also the ability for them to finish their high school diploma, have that degree in hand, so that they don't have to go back to the former ways of life that got them in the poor decisions that they're in the first place. So I did want to recognize, we have Addie and Casey here with us today, who are both here in Rockwell City and Fort Dodge, who oversee the program, and we just appreciate the partnership that we continue to have, and thank you for all that you do. Is there any questions that we can specifically answer for you about the second chance Pell for our students?
I have a question. The question I have for you is, how is it that you make the tuition affordable for the inmates? How do we do that?
And that's part of the second chance Pell. So why they call it second chance Pell is at the federal level, any Pell grant that is provided to any student in the nation that isn't claimed is then put into a pot for specifically for inmates. So they go through the financial aid process, they receive the funds from the federal government to do the Pell Grant, which then helps them on the tuition cost to be able to graduate, not only on time, but with reduced cost of total education. So, and community colleges, you know, in general, I love Iowa, love Iowa State. I don't mean so sorry for any of those graduates. You know, in general, community colleges in Iowa were half the cost of those region schools. So for our students, not just the ones here and one in Fort Dodge, but it provides them an effective and efficient higher education.
Awesome.
Dr. Lori, I think they told me they had some handouts they can hand out to the members of the group that show the actual numbers since inception. It's really impressive. And maybe you guys, Abby, I don't know if you guys want to maybe just explain that a little bit.
I've got one copy, I'll bring it up to
Thank you.
Thank you, Warden Lamb, and I appreciate you coming too to get both perspectives. So we appreciate both of your time and information. The director's update has changed slightly. That Director Skinner is ill this morning, and so Randy got the 3:45 a.m. call.
Well, that's what time I left Fort Madison anyway.
Oh, okay. The call was earlier?
Yeah. Thank you, Becky and Board. I always like to start out by recognizing a few folks. I see Amanda Milligan here from the 2nd Judicial District, the Director. I know that she has been a very good partner with Warden Lamb and Adam and working together to further our reentry efforts. So that's awesome to see you here today. I'd also like to recognize Security Director Troy Hammond, sitting there in the back. Troy, how many years do you have in now?
Ooh, just over 25.
25 years. I've been fortunate enough to know Troy his entire career. So glad to see you here, Troy.
Thank you.
Rockwell City, North Central. I'm going to take a selfish moment here. I smile when I come here. I will tell you that 30 years ago, Warden John Alt took a chance on a 22-year-old kid and promoted him from Anamosa to here as a lieutenant, and that was me. So that began my road of supervision and leadership, and it started right here. So always love coming here. Wonderful place. So I wanted to make sure you knew that. Directors updates. Well, we had a lot actually, but I'll try to get through them. I tanked up on coffee this morning, so I'm sure this will be brief. All right. We've hired a new CIO in the central office. John Needleman is going to basically oversee our IT department. We've never really had a full-time person, believe it or not, to supervise our entire department's IT. And we really identified that need, especially these days, so we're very happy to have John on board. John has been with us since 2006, and he is out of Oakdale. Victim Services Director Mary Roach was nominated and awarded the Meritorious Service Award from the Peer Support Foundation. You know her work with our SDS groups.
Victim services.
Yeah, victim services and so on. She's earned that. Let's see here. The Iowa Victim and Restorative Justice Program received a grant from the National Institute of Corrections to develop a national victim offender dialogue, that's known as VOD, facilitator training. Earlier this year, the DOC was nominated by OCIO for a State Government Project Experience Award through the Center of Digital Government focused on Tech to Connect program. The DOC has been named a winner of the award.
Right.
Dr. Greenfield, our health administrator, he was invited by ACA to help conduct a 4-day learning event in Washington, D.C. for new health service administrators from 4 states. September 20th through 23rd, he, along with 3 peers, taught a variety of classes on healthcare delivery prison systems. Congratulations to our Iowa DOC K-9 team. They competed in the United States Police Canine Association Nationals in Georgia this last month of September. Their team also included a deputy from Ida County. There were 79 canines competing in the trial. We actually took first place. And so we're very proud of our canine team and our programs. So we also took Sergeant Yeager finished 3rd place overall with narcotics, and Sergeant Barnes received 4th place agility. So nationally, we did very well. Something to be proud of as well. September 21st, at Brushy Creek here in Fort Dodge, we held what we call a CERT challenge. You know, CERT is our emergency response team. And that, we call it a challenge, but it's more of a competition style training, because it allows us to judge the readiness of our teams through a competition. And so we host that every year, and Fort Dodge and Rockwell City do a wonderful job of hosting that. And so our teams did very well. This year, first place went to Oakdale, which is kind of a surprise, because I always figured Fort Dodge cheated if they wanted to. So kudos to Oakdale. Also, you need to know, something else we're very proud of, is the statewide crisis negotiation team competition was held. That includes everybody from the law enforcement community and all 9 of our correctional facilities. And the Fort Dodge Rockwell City team took first place in the entire state.
That's great.
Very proud.
Wow.
There's the lead negotiator sitting right over there.
Stand up.
Great job.
Good job. So, you know, with our specialty teams, we're very proud of the work that they've done, and that they're really dedicated, so thank you. Often, you know, I'm a former CERT guy, but often C&T is overlooked, and sometimes they feel left out, but truly we have talented people and dedicated people, and we're very proud of you as much as we are canines and CERT, okay? At the recent Interstate Commission for Adult Offender Supervision annual business meeting, Simone Hammond was elected Midwest Chair for the Deputy Compact Administrator, and Deputy Director Sally Kramer was named the Midwest Chair of Commissioners. And lastly, Channel 13 in Des Moines took a visit to Newton. Some of you may have saw that on television.
Not yet.
Not yet? They are looking at the Homes for Aqua program, and they're obviously going to televise a segment on that here soon. So we're very proud of there's another program we're very proud of. I want to give one more shout out to Rockwell City. Obviously, we're a minimum camp here, right? But they are the last line before reentry often, right? And they do such a wonderful job here of preparing guys for reentry. Adam, Deputy Warden Mar, how many offenders would you say you guys turn out a year from this place?
Our 5-year average is 525.
That's basically their population here. So they turn over their population, in essence, once every year.
Wow.
And these folks are going to live next to you and I think they do a wonderful job, especially with the resources they have. So with that, let's give Rockwell City a round. Does the board have any questions for me? Thank you.
That's a good report.
That was a great report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
Joanna wrote it for me. Thanks, Joanna. Okay, next up, it looks like we have apprenticeship.
Randy,
study. No, I'm
I'm
sorry.
going to interrupt you and go back. You know, back in the day, I don't know whether it was a personal warden's choice or it was more of a department mentality, but we used to get invites to the graduations for apprenticeship and GED or HISET. And I would appreciate if the wardens would do that because I've been to a few and they're amazing. And I really would encourage the board members.
It is.
I think we're gonna invite you to a lot more than that, how about that? You certainly should have been invited, or could have been invited to the CERT challenge, you could have been invited to the CNT and all those other things, so we will definitely, it's noted, making an effort to make sure you know about everything that's going on. Thank you for bringing that up.
That's a very good point.
Thank you, Deputy.
Anything else?
No, now you can.
All right. Apprenticeship programs here, apprenticeship study, we have Sarah, our research director, which, you guys are up.
I'll be actually super brief because I have had the smallest amount of role in this project. I'm actually going to turn it over directly to Dane and Mindy. We have some fabulous findings that we're going to share with you about our apprenticeship programs, but they are the folks who have done the most work on the project, and they're excited to share what they have.
Don't think you're getting out of this that easy. You got a few slides in. There's a team effort. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for having us and allowing us to sit in front of you. As Deputy Director Gibbs said, my name is Dane Slindick. I'm the Apprenticeship Coordinator for Corrections. I actually presented, I believe, to the board this spring. So some of this stuff is relative, I hope you retained it, and you probably even recognize some of these slides. So I'm actually going to get through my piece relatively quickly because I really want Mindy to explain the report and the data findings. So to give you a brief update here of kind of what we're going to talk about. So as I mentioned in my previous presentation to the board, it's almost been 3 years now, right? Going on 2 years, that we've been working with Mindy and her team to take a look at our apprenticeship programs as a whole throughout the state. And ultimately figure out, do they work? Are they doing what we claim that they're doing? And again, we'll let Mindy kind of go through those numbers. But when that opportunity was presented to me by Sarah, she came to me and said, hey, would you be interested in having this report and the study done? I was absolutely 100%. And I even knew going into it that there might be some things in there that were maybe negative or something that we needed to look at. But how do we grow if we don't know what we don't know or what we don't know that we need to fix? So it's been a long road, but this spring Mindy was able to finish up the report and we have the findings for that. Which I'm super excited about. I think this really reiterates the impact of these programs and how important this type of training is within our facilities and for our incarcerated individuals. So with that said, I'll just run through kind of the apprenticeship summary here quickly. So we do have 30 registered apprenticeships at this time. We just got a new program registered, which I'll go over here in a little bit. So we're up to 30. We are in every facility, all 9 institutions have apprenticeships, and we have been hovering around the 300 active apprentice mark for a couple of years now. But that number is soon going to be growing, potentially doubling here in the next couple of years. Wow, that's on tape, isn't it? Okay. Don't quote me on that, but that's the hope, is to really get these numbers up with the programs that we're adding. And we also have just passed the 400 mark of individuals who have completed their program since we started, and I believe the first program was registered in 2015. So yeah, we're doing a great job with all the barriers and different things going on. Our apprenticeships continue to stay steady and continue to grow. So just to give everyone a little refresh of registered apprenticeship, as again, I'm sure you guys recognize this slide. There's really 3 or 4 main components of registered apprenticeship. First and foremost, on-the-job training, and then related training instruction. Those are the 2 main pieces. On-the-job training is obviously what these individuals learn on the job. So every apprenticeship that we have is an actual occupation job in the facilities. So those individuals are working, getting paid, working with supervisors, mentors, learning those skills while they work. Related training instruction is that classroom component. That's the supplementary education that they get, the book work, I like to say. And we have self-study models, we have online, we have in-class instruction. So we really try to make it, based off the facility and the barriers that we have, try to accommodate whatever the best approach would be for them to receive that training. So those are the two main pieces of registered apprenticeship. And then once they complete their program, and a program could be anywhere from 2,000 hours to 8,000 hours on the job training. 2,000 hours is equivalent to 1 year of work. So obviously 2,000 hours is 1 year, 8,000 hours is a 4-year program, which is pretty lengthy. But those are looking at your trade programs, you know, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, you know, welding, those programs that take a little bit longer to learn the skills. And once they complete that, they will get their credential from Department of Labor. So everything that we do is administered by the Federal Department of Labor. I work really closely with them to make sure that we comply with all of their standards and practices and everything that we need to do. So that was a very quick rundown of kind of how apprenticeship works. But I think the main thing to take from that is they are actually working, getting paid in these jobs, and they're also receiving supplementary training as well to go with it, that curriculum piece. And we do partner with our community colleges, Iowa Central, we work very closely with them, DMAC in Des Moines with our facilities close to Des Moines. So it is a fantastic partnership that you know, we continue to utilize and do different certifications as well to go along to supplement that training with the apprenticeship. So outstanding that we're able to have that, because as I go around to different states and kind of speak or, you know, do tours and understand how they, you know, do their training, their education, a lot of states don't have that, you know, that partnership with colleges or community colleges like we do. So definitely something we should not take for granted. So here's the next slide there, the next list, if you can see it, I know the font might be kind of small, is the list of our programs. Again, we have 30, and if you run through those, you'll see that they hit just about every industry, every sector. That is not done on accident. That's, you know, we try to look and see what the needs are in the state, because obviously these individuals will be releasing and going back to the state. So what are those skills that we need to get them trained on that they can actually get real employment when they get out? But one I wanted to point out, especially today, is the Production Tech program. That's the newest one that we just got registered with the Department of Labor. So I know Deputy Director Gibbs mentioned, or actually it was Warden Lamb mentioned the balloon folders here. And I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see them in action out there at the shop. Well, you should really go take a tour. It is quite the operation. So we work with a company out of Minnesota who ships us Mylar balloons, like the balloons you see like Hy-Vee or Walgreens. Millions of them get sent to us to get folded, packaged, put in boxes, and shipped out. Wow. So you think like, okay, well, apprenticeship in that. Really? That exists? Like, what do we do there? So this production technologist or production tech is really kind of like a line worker. And if you do get a chance to go out there, which I highly recommend, take a look, you'll see that operation is run smoothly and seamlessly and efficiently. You would, again, picture in your head, well, they're just folding balloons. Well, there's quotas they've got to meet. They got to meet the demands of the company, and it's a private sector company. So I mean, this is a real business that is relying on them to work and get this job done. So we have hundreds of individuals working in this position across the state, but they're not leaving with any type of credential. You know, what can we look at? Well, can we get these individuals working in this job? So that's where we came up with the Production Tech Apprenticeship. It's a 1-year program, which is great because a lot of these balloon shops that we have are in the release centers, so they're not here very long to work in that position, so they can get through it. And this program specifically, which I'm really excited about, is a competency-based program. So instead of the 2 years of on-the-job training they have to get, there's actually a set of competencies that if they reach those, they've completed their on-the-job training. So that could take an individual 2 months. That can take an individual 6 months or 8 months, whatever it takes. So it allows these guys, these men and women, to move through this kind of at their own pace. And then obviously on the other side of that, there is the related training instruction, which we're actually going to utilize computer-based learning for that through different e-learning modules and different things that we've either created in-house or we're going to provide through third-party sites. So I'm super excited. This will add anywhere from 50 to 100 apprentices, just like that. And then continue to grow that number as well. So company-based, computer-based, like we're really moving this forward where I think we can really get men and women credentialed skills and get them out so they don't come back. So I just wanted to touch on that one because like I said, that's our new one. And We're working on the IT piece on that, the related training instruction piece. We're not quite ready to roll it out, but we will be soon, I hope. So, any questions so far? I'm rolling through this really fast.
One question. The question I have is how soon can a client and inmate get into those programs?
It all depends on the job. So those individuals have, and then the facility, what job openings are there? So that's an IPI private sector job, so those are very highly coveted. Usually there's, a waiting list for those. So it just depends. They've got to meet their standards of the facility, make sure that their security level, all of that is clear, they're able to work in one of those jobs. And then they go through a hiring process, just like they would if they were out, and they get hired onto that position. So it really just depends on how many openings there are, the classification of the individual, and just certain things like that. So, but once they're in, they then automatically are able to participate in an apprenticeship because they are then hired in and they're currently getting paid for that job.
One last question. How many apprenticeships can an client
Participate in?
Yeah.
Well, they can only be one at a time because you can only work and have one job, get paid, and then also be enrolled into an apprenticeship. That's a DOL policy. However, you complete your apprenticeship, you get your certificate, you switch jobs, that's also apprenticeable, move here in London. What's his name? Keith, Mr. Bruns here. Seven apprenticeships he's completed. And he was instrumental in the very beginning at Anamosa in our facility in getting these programs off the ground and identifying what skills need to be learned, what the training needs to happen, put shops together in an efficient way. So he's been amazing to work with, and if there's an opportunity for him to get another one, I think he will. Like he doesn't stop. So you can get as many as you can as long as you're in that job.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Do they get a temporary license then for that apprentice, like if it's a license type, like?
For the state?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the apprenticeship just basically says they've completed the apprenticeship program. They got their hours and their related training instruction done. Now, every state's different, so they then have to go through that state license application process, guidelines, take the test and do all that.
Can they do that here?
They can do it inside. Most of the time that's done on the outside. That would be great if we could do that. I work closely with the licensing boards just to try to make that as seamless as possible because it is very daunting. And firsthand the barbering process, the amount of money, the cost, the time that goes into that. So we try to prepare them as much as we can before they get out so they can either take that written test, whatever it may be, get a temporary license, and then if there's a practical exam or something else they can do that down the road. So we try to prepare them as much as we can for those jobs that require that state license.
Yeah, like for the applicator license.
Yeah, and there's some things that we probably could do in here, but when it comes to those bigger trade programs, that's usually done on the outside. Yep. Any other questions on the programs?
Kind of in conjunction with that, is there any way that there can be a transition when somebody has completed their hours, but they have the coursework left? I just crossed paths with a released offender in Cedar Rapids, and by all accounts, he was the model incarcerated individual. And I asked him about apprentice, and it seems a bit of a stumbling block if they don't have enough time to do the coursework. And is there anything we can do about that to provide them, even if they're gonna be released, if they have the internal?
And they can complete when they get out. I think one of the biggest issues we find is they don't have enough time to complete their OJT hours. So completing their RTI, their book work, whatever it may be, that's usually a little bit easier because they can kind of do that on their own pace. So what I always say is at least get your classroom piece done.
Yes.
And then when you get out, you can still complete your hours if you get hired on in that same occupation because technically they're still under DOC supervision, so they're still our apprentice. Or if that company has their own apprenticeship and they go through their own training provider, we can transfer them to them and then they become their apprentice. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding when someone completes a program that they go to a place that also has an apprenticeship and they try to continue on. And it's like, no, you guys are journeyman level. You're ready to go. You have the training, that DOL says is standard across the board. and you're able to start. Now, where an employer starts them, that's up to the employer, right? But yes, that is a barrier. We do as much as we can. It does depend on the individual, but we have had multiple individuals complete their RTI, not complete their OJT, get out, and then complete when they're released. Rarely does it happen the other way, and that gets a little bit tricky because then you're looking at, well, how do they get books? How do they test? But that's where we work with our CBCs and their parole officers and different things. I've done that before. I've sent books across the state. It's like, hey, this person literally just needs one more test. Can you proctor this test for them? And if that's all it takes, then that's what we do. So I try to work, if it's a specific case like that, we can work with them. But if it's online or computer-based, if they have internet access, they can get on and do it there as well. So there is an avenue for them to finish if they release. But that's also why I'm looking for more computer-based training and also competency-based programs. The trades will always be hours just because that's the nature of the beast and it's a safety thing. But some of these other programs, I'm hoping we can do like a hybrid or just go to competency so they can get through it as quickly as possible.
Thank you, I'm
Yeah,
glad to hear
yeah.
that.
So the next slide, I'll just touch on this briefly. Again, it's just mainly kind of our goals and what we do, what the goal of the program is. You know, provide those opportunities for individuals to learn these skills, give that sense of purpose, work with them on that education piece, whether it be through the apprenticeship or community college partners or third-party credential. Not everything needs to be an apprenticeship, and I'm the first one to say that as the apprenticeship coordinator. I get a lot of ideas thrown at me, like, can we do an apprenticeship on this and that? It's like, well, it's only like 3 weeks of training. Just go through the training, get your certificate, and move on. You don't need a full-blown apprenticeship for that, you know, maybe. So that's where we work closely with all of our partners, our other state agencies to provide that educational piece or that credential piece. And then obviously our goal is to reduce recidivism, and that's what we're going to really get into here with our numbers. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised for those of you that haven't looked ahead of what those numbers are.
So how do you coordinate that within the department with the corrections education area and the apprenticeship? Because, you know, how do the prisoners know which option is better for them, whether it's going to the community college or the second chance Pell route? I just don't see the...
And there's, that depends on the facility and the counselors, the reentry coordinators, and also our IWD advisors. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give Brian a shout out. He's the IWD advisor here at Rockwell City. I'm going to go off on a tangent and follow what Randy did here. I know he mentioned the one-for-one, getting out, coming in, releasing here. Brian works one-on-one with those guys every single day, and he does a fantastic job. He oversees all of the apprenticeships. Not only that, he's doing the IWD side as well. So, sorry, I had to give you a... If you have any specific questions after the meeting, he'd be one to chat to because he knows, and that's kind of how it goes across the board. It just depends on the facility. But what do they want to do? What is the better option for them? Maybe it's to get a job, get some money, and start paying off any fines or different things that they need to do. Or maybe they already went to college for a bit and they want to complete their degree. Maybe that's where they go the Pell route with the community colleges. Or maybe there's a way for those both to work together in some way. And that's actually what I'm working with a few individuals to see how can we combine that. So they get that real on-the-job training while also potentially being able to get that credential from a community college. So it just depends. But yeah, that's definitely what we try to work with. Sorry, Brian.
I'm delaying this, but what's the relationship with the unions? I mean, I know that they've been difficult to sort of...
I mean, with my experience, they've actually been pretty open to discussion. Unions, they have their own training, their own way of doing things, but they also are very open to what our guys, our men and women, are doing. And they recognize our training. It really does come down to, again, that specific union or that specific employer where they would bring that individual on. So there is a way for them to say an apprentice wants to go maybe finish. So they would go to a union if that's a route they want to go, and then maybe they test out or they test up. And that's where that experience inside the facility helped them get to that point. So yeah, the unions actually have been very receptive, and I've worked really well with them as far as our training. It'll never be a one-to-one. It just won't, because everyone's trainings are different. So even if you complete your apprenticeship in here and you go and you know, become a union member, you may have to, like I said, test up and prove that you know what that credential says you should know. But yeah, I think we have a good relationship with them. I've never had an issue. And I've worked with all of them, because we have all of those trades, so. All right, let's get to the good stuff. So the area of focus. So again, as I go through all that, right, it all sounds great. So it all sounds like, yeah, of course this works. And I get that question all the time. Dane, does this work? Dane, what's the most successful programs? Dane, what's the recidivism numbers? What does all that look like? And I had to sit there and bite my tongue almost off because I couldn't answer it. Because we didn't have that information. You know, the apprenticeship is still relatively new in the grand scheme of things. And we also just haven't had a lot of individuals release who have completed or release who have completed and work in that field for various reasons. And it's one of those where it's like, how can I figure this out? And again, Sarah happened to come to me with this opportunity for us to figure out these numbers. And again, I'm a believer. I obviously think this stuff works. I think most of us do, but we do have to have proof. We have to have numbers, especially when we're talking about funding and budgets and everything. Where's this money going? What works? What doesn't? We have 30 programs. We have over 300 apprentices. Do we need all of those programs? Do they all work like they're supposed to? Do we need that many apprentices? Should we have more? Are we capable of having more? So these are all numbers that I'm excited that we're looking at and really trying to dig into. So I'm going to quit talking, and I'm going to let Mindy and Sarah, can you jump in and just kind of explain your piece of kind of how this all went down, the research and data part that you do?
Sure.
And then I'll let Mindy go into the fun stuff of the numbers, and then we'll open it up for questions there. So I'll let Sarah take over here.
So I actually remember the origination of this project a little differently than Dane does. I believe I was on the 4th day of my new job as research director, and this man who I've never seen before busts through my door, again, day 4, saying, I'm Dane, I oversee the apprenticeship programs, I need to figure out if they work. So Mindy actually works for the Division of Criminal and Juvenile Justice Planning, which is the agency that I worked for before transitioning to corrections. And so Mindy has this unique funding opportunity as part of CJJP that presents that division with the opportunity to help corrections do independent and objective evaluation work. So the benefit of having CJJP perform an evaluation is because they really have no stake in the situation. You know, they are not a corrections-based entity, they are entirely independent and objective. And so when this opportunity presented to partner with CJJP, I was absolutely very interested in seeing from an objective lens whether or not it worked. So we've had the opportunity to work directly with Mindy, as well as tying our data to the Iowa workforce data, which I don't believe that we've done historically with other types of research projects. So not only do we have the ability to tell you whether or not the apprenticeship programs work in the sense of whether they're reducing recidivism, we're also going to be able to tell you whether or not they work in regards to specifically syncing people up with employment opportunities and what it looks like for wage earnings for our apprenticeship completers. So again, like I said, I have literally had the smallest role in this project. It has been Dave and Mindy who have headed it off, and they've done some incredible work, and I will shut up and do work.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having us, and thank you, Dean and Sarah, for letting me be involved in this project. It's been a lot of fun. So anytime that we do a research study, we always like to have, kind of an independent sample or a randomized controlled trial, if you've heard of that. Well, we know just by the nature of the apprenticeship programs that people self-select, that they want to be part of this. So one of the things that we wanted to do first and foremost was to look at the overall apprenticeship cohort and see, do they differ than our overall prison population? Because if they are younger, if they have lower offenses or something of that, we might contribute our findings to the differences between the two groups. So one of the first things that we did on the slide, as you can see, is we compared our apprenticeship cohort to the overall prison cohort at that time. And you can see by age, by gender, and by race, they are all very, very similar. And we kind of skipped ahead to
Sorry,
some
slide
slides.
number
13.
Sorry, usually.
Sorry, we don't have
We're
a
just moving.
visual for you,
Yep.
right there.
One photographs.
So just to tell everybody who can't see, so our apprenticeship cohort was about 77% age 18 to 44, where the overall population was about 71.5%. So again, very similar. Gender, apprenticeship cohort was about 90% male, and in the general population, it's 92%. In the apprenticeship cohort, we have 70% that are white, and in the general population, it's 65% white. So again, you can see that those demographics are very, very close. Then to give you a little bit of overall on the actual study cohort itself. So Dane sent us over a file of every apprentice that had enrolled in any apprenticeship over time. As we mentioned, there are some individuals that have enrolled in several apprenticeships. But again, when we want to look at numbers, this is slide 14. So when we want to look at numbers like recidivism, we want one individual per apprenticeship. So what we did is we took the most recent apprenticeship every individual enrolled in. So that left us with a cohort of 1,414 people. So a pretty good sample size to actually carry out our study on, which we were very happy about. Then we actually further broke those down into the released cohort, because that's where we're going to look at our recidivism in. And since the inception, we've had 673 apprentices that have actually been released from prison. We have 6 that passed away. And we have 735 that are still currently incarcerated. So we're not going to focus on that group today, but I still want to highlight the importance of them because they are probably still going through it. They are going to be close to release, or they are individuals that may be here long term that have done several apprentices but are journeymen that are very critical to the apprenticeship role in helping to train and other things like that. So going back to that released cohort of 673 individuals, we had 92 of those that completed an apprenticeship and 581 that had not completed at their time of release. So just looking at recidivism. So of those that completed the apprenticeship, their recidivism rate was 16.3%. Those that did not complete an apprenticeship, their recidivism was 32.7%.
Okay.
So you can see that those that successfully complete an apprenticeship program have a drastically reduced recidivism rate. The next thing we wanted to do was kind of break that down a little bit. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of factors within the apprentices that are very correlated. So age, conviction class of crime, length of stay. All of those really are closely correlated, so we had to kind of look at them individually and see how they played in a role in completion. And if you can look at the slides, what you can see is that older people have a higher rate of completion. And again, that's more likely tied to length of stay than, motivational factors and why they're actually here. The next thing that we looked at is completion rate by most serious convicting crime. And this was a little bit surprising, but not so much when you start to think of the other factors going in. But our A felons were more likely to complete an apprenticeship and going on down in crime class. But what we found there, again, is it's more tied to length of stay than it is actual crime class in and of itself. Like Dave mentioned, the programs range from 1 year to 4 years. So in order for somebody to complete, they have to be incarcerated for that length of time. Obviously, our aggravated misdemeanors, some of our D felons, depending on when they enrolled, might not have that length of stay left to complete their apprenticeship program. And so if you look at the full report, that's where some of those recommendations come in. Is a lot of times incarcerated individuals are here for a while before they are made aware of the apprenticeship programs. So is there a method of which we could get them to realize them sooner so that they can get enrolled in them sooner if they are willing and ready? And so one of the things that you'll see in the report is could we earlier on in their stay get them interested, get them knowledgeable, get them on a path that could get them into an apprenticeship program. One other thing I want to note is I'm presenting a lot on the quantitative data, but we also did a very big qualitative side with the actual program sponsors at each of the institutions. So we actually went in, we sat down with them, we talked to them a lot. They gave us a lot of great information that is expanded a lot more in that report that we gave. But you know, they just talked to them about, you know, what can DOC do to support you? You know, what are, from your perspective, are things that we can do to increase enrollment? So a lot of that data is actually in the full report that you can access on CJKP's website, and maybe we can send out after the meeting as well if you're interested. To keep going on that quantitative data side though. So the other thing Sarah mentioned that we did is we took her cohort and we worked with IWD to see if we could get employment rate and wage per quarter after release. And so we sent over the file that gave them all the completers, those that didn't have an opportunity to complete, and then we also pulled the 2018 cohort of data because they had 2 years worth of data at that time to compare to. So we have apprenticeship completers, we have those that didn't have the opportunity to complete, and then we have the 2018 general population that was released. And so you can see, if you have the slides in front of you, that the Q1 post-release employment rate was 71.4% for those that completed an apprenticeship, 68.1% for those that didn't have the opportunity to complete. So those were pretty close, actually, in employment rate. And it was 50% for the 2018%. So you can see here that even just being enrolled in an apprenticeship program seemed to give some positive results in the form of employment. And this carried out over time. So we also have in the slides the Q4 employment rate. It was 71 still for apprentices, so you can see they were employed and kept employed over time. The apprenticeship who didn't have the opportunity to complete dropped off a little bit. Their employment rate was 55% at this time. And for the FY18, the general population, it was down to 37%. Looking at employment rate, so here we can see some pretty stark differences as well. So again, this is quarterly wage. So quarter one post-release wage is $7,700 for those that completed, $6,100 for those that didn't have the opportunity to complete, compared to $4,600 for the general population. So again, you can see that it can be a pretty good bump in employment wage as well. And then looking at over time for Q4, those that completed, it rose up to $8,200. For those that didn't have the opportunity to complete, it was almost $7,000. And then for the general population, it was about $5,400. So again, you can see over time that those results stayed pretty consistent. So our Apprenticeship 1 largely focused on quantitative data for apprentices and the qualitative data for the sponsors. We actually received funding for what we call Apprenticeship 2, where we are focusing on a lot more qualitative with the apprentices. So we have put together kind of questionnaires that we are going to approach and do focus groups with different apprentices because we want to learn from their perspectives. What are some of the barriers that they see? What are some of the opportunities that they see that could develop? And that's going to help us create a survey that we can offer to all incarcerated individuals so we can get kind of almost a statewide picture from their perspective how we can make it better. Or if we can identify barriers, how can we help break those down? Or if it's people just not being aware, how can we increase awareness across different institutions? So we are getting ready to put that to the IRB hopefully in December. So hopefully in the spring, we'll be able to start collecting that data. We're also going to hopefully work with sponsors again to kind of do some follow-up with them to kind of supplement the report as well.
So I think if I can just summarize a little bit and do a big picture of some of Mindy's findings. We have a very interesting trifecta. Not often do we see programming that significantly reduces recidivism, significantly hooks people up with employment opportunities once released, and significantly improves wage earnings over time. Also, I think what's interesting as a result of this finding is that even though those who completed apprenticeship programs had significantly better outcomes, even just the presence of the apprenticeship program for people who didn't complete and were released, even just the presence of a small amount of training appears to have made a monumental impact in the outcomes that we observed. So I do think that we have clear evidence to suggest that these programs work, and they work very well at achieving many of the outcomes that we have for the department. I'm looking forward to the future research that Mindy's going to help us do.
Yeah, numbers kind of speak for themselves. That's why I wanted her to kind of explain all of that. And that's, you know, that recidivism rate, that's just, it's eye-opening. It really is. Just to be enrolled in one, let alone finish it, is under the current recidivism rate now. So again, my goal, working with Mindy and Sarah, obviously moving forward, would be what are those programs that are working, that are really causing that impact. But again, like I mentioned before, how can we maybe alter or you know, update our programming to get more people through it quicker? Because you're always going to have long-term individuals, and they're always going to be in, they're going to be able to complete, and that's great. But in release centers, it's one-to-one. We're moving them in and we're moving them out. So what can we get with that credential? Because obviously the data says if they're even enrolled, it's going to drastically reduce that recidivism. So how can I look at these programs, alter them in a way that we can get them through, get the training they need, whether that's computer-based, competence-based, whatever that may be, look at more short-term programming instead of those 8,000-hour programs, and just keep that going. And then, yes, work with the facilities, because these numbers are going to grow. It's going to happen. I already told you that production tax is going to add probably 50 to 100 for Brian, and he already has 50, 60, something like that right now on his roster, not to mention everything else that he does for the facility on the IWD. And so that's where it come back to, you know, our executive team, you know, this board, to say, hey, is there a way for us to potentially have more staff or do something in the facilities to help ease that burden of having one individual oversee these programs? Because obviously they work, they're great. Now we have to be able to maintain them efficiently inside. And we actually have been able to, thank you, Steve, get 2 more IWD advisors hired in 2 other facilities, which is fantastic at Corinda and Fort Dodge. So we will then have 6 IWD advisors in 9 of our facilities. And they are monumental in bridging that gap from getting ready to release and that reentry piece. So again, super excited. I knew this was the data that was going to come out, but now I have it. Now I have the proof. So, but now we know. So now the work begins, right? Like we gotta keep this going and figure out what the best way forward is. And that's what that second round is going to hopefully provide with context of each facility, the apprenticeship sponsors, any staff that work with the programs, and obviously the apprentices get their input. Why didn't you enroll? Did you not know about this? Why did you quit? You know, it could have been simple as they're releasing, or they wanted a different job, you know, anything like that. And I know Mindy touched on it as well. How can we then, if they get into Oakdale and they get classified, how can we start them on that path of what they want to do so they're not job jumping every facility or every 6 months just for the sake of working or trying something new? That's going to be a bigger challenge, but I think with these numbers, we're able to maybe hone that to a few programs and say, this is your path, this is what you want to do, okay. You're going to work here, and your goal is to get to this facility where we have these resources. We have a community college that can help you with credentials or different things like that, whatever that program may be. So that's how I see us going forward with it.
Is there a piece during classification that has apprenticeship? I mean, can we kind of plant the seed?
I don't-
You're captive?
embarrassed, but I don't know for sure if that's in that part of it when they come in and get classified. I do know that when they come to, like, well, use here for example, when they come here, when they get transferred here, Brian does orientations for everybody to let them know these are what's available, this is how you get, enrolled, come see me, that whole thing. But is that happening at Oakdale? I don't know, and if it's not, where do we put that? It could just be, here's a list of apprenticeship opportunities within the Department of Corrections. If you have any questions, go to your apprenticeship sponsor. It could be as simple as that. So yeah, I definitely want to look at that piece, because I do think we're missing, because I'm sure you get guys that come in that have no idea that these even exist.
Every day.
Which is astounding to me at this point, because once they get here, they've already maybe been to a couple facilities. So that's where, again, my job is to make sure the facilities know this is part of operations, this is part of programming, that, staff need to know, be aware that these are going on. They don't have to know all of the ins and outs, it's just more, here, go talk to this person. They're the ones that can help you with that, so. Yes, sir.
I think this is really compelling research, shows the success of it. Can we do the same type of research for the Second Chance Pell? We have over 1,000 people that have enrolled, and I know in the past, the community college has tried to work with DOC and IWD to get that done, but have we made any progress in doing the same type of research? Because it's an important aspect as well. Can we look at that?
I think the answer is yes. If the question is, can we do this, the answer is absolutely yes. The data exists, the partnerships again exist. We just need a mechanism for which to do it, but it certainly is capable.
So what mechanism would you need? Other than,
Probably resources to help support Mindy's work as CJJ.
Not a large pot of funds, but yeah, just a small to get the work done. Yeah.
because I think the college has to report back to the department, the federal agencies about the success of the program.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be important to show the same, results based on research that you've done with the apprenticeship with Second Chance. And now that other colleges in the state are going to be authorized in a year or so to be allowing to be used Second Chance Pell, I think it'd be important for us to begin that research.
Absolutely. Let's talk more.
Are there any programs to help increase the comprehensive skills for people who want to get into some of the apprentice programs who may not have the comprehension at this point? Are there any programs that we can get established for them? Because I know everyone doesn't
Learn on the same pace, right. And one of the requirements for it to be in a registered apprenticeship is you do have to have your high school diploma equivalency. Now, I know that, again, so we do have those resources in the facilities to help those individuals. If they haven't received that, get to that point. But I do know there are standardized tests and different things that we classify them in different, whatever reading level they're at, or their comprehension level. Now, once they get into that job, and if they have their high school diploma, that's enough for them to technically get enrolled. And if they don't, if we don't know or share that information that they struggle, reading or comprehending, then, it's hard for us to help. Now, if a guy fails his test 3 times in a row and he misses like 20 each time, then we know, okay, something's going on. And we do have that ability to either help read the questions or give them more time or different things like that. So the resources are there. It's just a matter, I think it's pretty individual basis of who that individual's comfortable speaking to about that. If it's their counselor or their supervisor or whatever that may be, because that's a challenge, for sure a challenge. We provide all of this, and these guys get into these programs, but for some of them, are they really getting all they can out of it? So.
No, that's great. I looked up the national recidivism rate this morning, and they're way underneath it, so congratulations. That was awesome, so thank you. And I think it's 22% nationally, something like that. I don't know if I'm right. So 16%, and that's amazing. So good job. That's awesome.
And that's the other thing to look at too, obviously. Why are these individuals not completing? How can we get them more to complete? And again, that's phase 2. That's all of it, right? Looking at the programs, because time is a huge thing. Because I always say it's a path. This is a path for an individual. And yes, there's a start and finish, but just because you don't complete inside doesn't mean it was a failure. So we do enroll people in these programs knowing they will never complete it inside, they just don't have enough time. But they could finish their related training instruction. They could get a quarter of their hours done, get out, show that to an employer, or continue on with their programming. Now, for our purposes, obviously, we would like them to complete based off the numbers, but realistically, you know, that's just the nature of the beast. Guys are coming in, they're coming out, men and women are coming in, coming out. So how can we, again, maybe update our policies, our programs to make it easier for individuals to complete? So yeah, got our work cut out for us, but now we have a base, and we've got some positive numbers to keep pushing this forward, so. Any other questions? Thank you all very much, we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Becky, before we go to Steve today, we might, the audience, all of us might need to give you an explanation. You saw a bunch of people smiling and laughing because behind you, a dog obviously got loose from its handler and ran by. And then the offender ran by, and then the CO ran by.
I wish I would have seen it.
It was quite funny and entertaining, I must say. But in case you saw, that was all of a sudden. I wanted you to know. Thank you.
I appreciate that. All right, Steve.
All right.
End of the line again.
Yep.
I always feel bad for you.
That's all right, that's all right. Good morning, board. Welcome to Rockville City. I do want to put a plug in. As one of the smallest, I guess, facility overall in the state, they do a fantastic job of with the limited resources that they have, deploying those resources to really do some great things. This is one of our primary release state facilities, and as such, it's very important to our system, and that they're doing things the right way, and they absolutely are. So I wanted to once again give Warden Lamb and all the staff here kudos. As far as what I've got to present, it's not going to take a lot of time, but I wanted to kind of give you a status as to where we're at. The first several pages are 2022 that we just ended, fiscal year 2022. We did end up with a balance carry forward of about $6.4 million and a reversion of about $170,000. So we gave back about $170,000. Why is that? The majority of the carry forward revolves around the $10 million that we had. We had a pretty good chunk, about $4.7 million of that remaining, which we have allocated to do certain things in 23. We had that ability to carry it forward. We wanted to make sure we use that money the best that we possibly could. So that is coming forward. We also have some education funds that don't get spent throughout the year that also carry forward. We've got code language that allows that from year to year. So those are the bulk of that $6.4 million that we carried forward. As far as the reversion of what we could spend, as everybody knows right now, supply chain is very, very difficult. So typically at the end of the year, we have some money that we need to spend in some capacity. The ability to do that this year was very difficult. So the supply chain was just so overwhelmed that we weren't able to physically get the goods. So there were some things that we had planned, had really requested, encumbered the money to be spent, and just didn't come through. The supply chain didn't come through for us. So there was a little bit of money that did go back to the state, which isn't always a bad thing either. So overall, 102% revenue. We did have additional revenues beyond what we envisioned, and of course, spent that in some capacity or carry it forward as such. The other sheets just kind of give a little bit of description as far as the institutions, the central office, and then the capitals. We did do some spending down of some capitals that were going to revert if we didn't get those projects completed. So we had some projects at ASP that we physically finished out in fiscal year 2002, and a number of projects that continue to move forward as well. And as you can see, the department totals do not include the capitals, so we did carry forward about $5.2 million of capitals funds, the majority of that being the Clorinda Kitchen project that we've got. It has been started, it's in development with the architects and such, but the physical groundwork has not started, and we would assume that that's probably going to start next spring at this point in time. That's the plan. We've got the full funds for that project, and plan to move forward as such. So once again, FY 2022, just wanted to kind of give you, this is how we kind of ended as such. As far as 23, it was, for the most part, status quo budget coming forward. We did receive some appropriations for salary adjustment dollars that we got put in. I did notice, so it's not going to necessarily transition from one to the next, we had a change in appropriation. We had our pharmacy that was broken out from the IMCC budget. That didn't get portrayed on here, so we're missing the $8.5 million of pharmacy budget, so I will make sure that gets fixed on the next one. But that does bring up a good conversation. Our pharmacy budget has been overspent for several years in a row. During COVID, it kind of went down because our population went down, but we've had some issues. Well, we do have some purchasing agreements that we're pursuing right now, and I think have actually been put in place. That's going to save a tremendous amount of money. We've got some biological medications that are given to some of our inmates. Some of those were upwards of $6,000 to $10,000. We're going to get some of those for 10 cents versus that through a different line group. So we're going to save a tremendous amount of money on that budget line. And I would hope and envision at this point in time, not only will we make budget, but hopefully we'll be able to do some other creative things. Maybe attack our hepatitis C issue that we've got within our prisons and treat more of those folks as well. So opportunities there, I think, are very, very good right now, and keeping that within budget. The reason why we separated that was to exactly do that, is get that away from the IMCC budget, get it out on its own, where this is a statewide appropriation. It's not for Oakdale. So wanted to kind of let that be known. The other part that comes into play with this being a status quo is that $10 million was distributed for the most part. We had $243,000, which I think at the last meeting we showed where that was going to go. So part of that did go to the community-based corrections, which is not part of these financials. So there's going to be a reduction, part of that $10 million that went out to them as well. So it won't necessarily transition from 22 to 23 is what I'm saying. Some other things that we wanted to kind of highlight. We have transitioned some money out to pay for staff bonuses that occurred in August. We did a $500 bonus for all staff that were on board as of the end of August. So that there is a line, the 204R in the revenues. Moved some of that money out to the prisons and judicial districts out of that $10 million to pay for that. Also down in the expense portion, there's the 414, the reimbursements to other agencies. That's the expense piece of that. So those look like we've spent a lot of money in those two lines, the revenue and the expenses. Well, that's why we're just shuffling some money between parts of our agency. So of course the other part of that is our personnel services would be a little higher than what it would normally be as well, just because of that bonus that would not be in other parts of the year. But overall, 99% of the revenue, of course, we're primarily appropriation based. The fees and such are not as big of a piece, so in the prison system. So we have received the bulk of our funds coming in. Ultimately, at the bottom of the sheet, 23% of the expense budgeted. So we're within that 25% quarter of the year in. We would expect to be around 25%, and we're right on target with that. Two other areas that I wanted to kind of mention, along in that 414 reimbursement, we also have paid our full workers' comp premiums for the year to the state. So that is a large chunk of money that comes out once a year. So that's going to drive that 80% that we're at right now. If we would spread that throughout the year, of course, we would have that be a much lower percentage. The other piece is the IT equipment, the other one that I wanted to indicate, showing at 170% of budgeted amount spent. We did have a $616,000 expense for firewall upgrades that needed to occur. Our equipment was past a replacement need at that point in time. So it was urgent that we, for protection of our agency, that we made that expenditure. And that is going to be funded out of the $10 million, the 4.7 that's left. So kind of wanted to kind of give a few pieces on that. The capitals on the very last page, just once again, The major project that's going to be funded throughout the next year and a half, most likely is the Clear the Kitchen. It's just short of a $15 million project, so when we're talking about those monies that are sitting in that fund right now, budgeted, the majority is going to that. We do have several technology projects that are underway. Some of those have already been, agreements have already been sent over to DAS with some funding to start those as well. So kind of wanted to just kind of give you a high level where we're at, what we're working on, some of our challenges. One challenge that I did want to mention is, I know the balloon was mentioned earlier. Some of that is being shuttered for a little while, so that is going to affect some of our revenues, and we're adjusting on the fly at those locations because there is revenue that comes into the department as well as the incarcerated population. So, and also looking for additional opportunities for those folks that are working in those sectors. So once again, it's never a dull day in corrections, where we always have challenges in front of us, but we have great people that are doing that work, making sure that we're going to come out in the black again. So, any questions?
Where are the balloons being?
So the balloons are at several of our locations right now. I believe here, ICAW, Mitchellville, I believe has. Mount Pleasant. So, and I don't know that they've been shuttered at all places at this point in time. And we're hoping it's just a temporary shutdown. That's what we're hoping. We don't know. I think that they're looking at it as they've got enough supply for a little while, so there's not a need for that. But like I said, we're hoping that comes back on. But once again, it does allow opportunities for us to evolve and find some other opportunities for our folks to build work. Especially in these locations like this where we have people going out in the community, it opens up those folks to maybe do some different things. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are now at the point of public comments. I don't know who's from the public or if there are comments, but our practice is for you to speak, and we will not answer questions at the meeting, but the department will address it before the next meeting. Are there any public comments at this point? Nothing online? Okay. We'll move on to the open discussion of board members. Do we want to do this today? Okay. So we've talked about the 4 statutory required meetings a year. And it looks like you put out kind of 3 different scenarios for us to consider. I don't know how people feel about 4, 6, or 12 meetings a year.
I guess what does the department prefer, or do you want to leave it up to us to decide?
No, it is ultimately up to the board, but as Chair Williams mentioned, in Iowa code, it does say meet quarterly. That is what the code section determines, as you said, but ultimately it is up to the board on what that schedule actually looks like.
I know that we have Larry live online, and I just would like to ask Larry, what does he think would be a good idea for us? Overall, Becky, I know that you and Larry have been on the board longer than any of us, so I would like to have Larry's opinion and your opinion, and I'll go with whatever you guys decide.
Larry, did you hear that?
Yeah, I didn't hear several things. Is there a statutory requirement to meet a certain number of times to say something like that?
It is quarterly.
Quarterly, okay. Well, you know, you and I have been on here for quite a while, and I'm not sure quarterly. I guess I'm more inclined to go with every other month at this point in time. And looking at the scheduling, it just seems like that. I don't know if we have to meet monthly, but it doesn't, I hate to go with going quarterly. I think we lose continuity by going that route, and I guess my feeling is every other month would be the best way to go.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion? Do you want us to make a motion, or how do you want us to?
Yeah, I would echo Larry's thoughts, especially since we had done 12 meetings a year for, I don't know how long. So maybe the transition to 6 for now, we can see if we're covering things thoroughly, and maybe in a number of years, consider going down to 4.
Yeah, and the board always has the ability to call additional meetings at any time necessary. You know, if there's something that comes up,
Sure.
we can communicate and you can call that meeting whenever you deem necessary.
Right, and I think we had to do a Zoom meeting a few months ago or something, you know, so leave both alternatives, either in person or on Zoom
Yeah.
as options,
I'll make a motion, we go bi-monthly.
all right? Second?
I agree, I second that motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, nay? Hearing no opposition, we will go to bi-monthly meetings. Thank you, Larry.
You bet.
Right. If there is no other discussion among the board members,
I had one thing I would like to just point out. I really enjoyed today's meeting because I love the apprenticeship program. And I've witnessed one of the apprenticeship program inmates to come back to Waterloo, and he's working. And he's also working a regular job, plus he's working at the Cosmetology College in Waterloo, in Cedar Falls, Iowa. So I know it works. So I witnessed it with Don Shea Reed. He came out of Mount Pleasant. Dane knows him very well. So I really know that the apprenticeship program works. The question I have is, how can we get more employees for the DOC? That's what I'm wondering, if we still putting out more commercials, or I know Joanna and everyone was at the State Fair, you know, trying to promote the DOC. And so I just want to know, what can we do, Nick, to try to increase the employment for the DOC? And are there going to be any more bonuses coming to the employees for the DOC?
You know, as far as the recruitment and retention piece, that's something we work on every single day. I give a lot of credit to each of the individual institutions, the wardens, their staff, for the creativity that they have implemented at their institutions in order to hire some folks. You know, our numbers we're looking up right now, for sure, in comparison to where we were last year. Radio ads, social media ads, showing up at job fairs. As you mentioned, the state fair, that's the first time we've gone and had a booth at the state fair as a department. And that's something that's...
Walk-in interviews.
Walk-in interviews.
Weekly. I mean, I want to butt in and just say I'm very proud of all the wardens. They have kept their foot on the gas. They have worked, they and their staff so hard recruiting, because as you know, it is extremely competitive out there right now. And in a lot of cases, individual companies have the ability to raise and lower their wages at will. As you know, we do not. So we really push hard on what it is to be a public servant and the value you gain from doing that. We are competitive with our benefits and salary as well, but we work extremely hard. There isn't a day that doesn't go by that we're not talking strategy to get people hired. So I just want you to have confidence in that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
any other comments?
Well, I just want to say thank you too today, because that apprenticeship program, I think, is such a turning point for individuals. And I just was so excited to hear that today. And also, I think that what's so important is the wraparound care that goes with that. Because you can't just have an apprenticeship program, you have to have that wraparound care. And I think that's what's really neat that's going on in the facility, but then when they go out, they still need to, as a community, do that wraparound care. So I thought that was just really powerful, and I love seeing that recidivism rate today, so thank you guys, that was impressive.
I have one last question. Are the ministers, are they allowed back into the prisons in Iowa yet at this point?
Yeah, so we've actually, we're in the midst of that process right now. As you all know, during the pandemic, we shut off our volunteer services, our institutions, to protect inmates, staff, folks that come into the institutions. So we've been working, for quite some time, probably, the last several months, to bring back online our religious volunteer services. So each institution, just to kind of explain the process that we went through, each institution, is aware of all the folks that volunteered before the pandemic. So we have those contact lists, and we've come up with a new process. You actually have to apply to be able to come in. So there's an application process that each of those volunteer services have to go through. And, it's based on resources available when it comes to staff time at the institutions, and what makes sense for that specific institution. Safety and security is our number one priority, right? So when it comes to bringing volunteers back into those institutions, we have to make sure that that's top of mind. So when they have the opportunity to go in and apply, that process is now completed. So if there were folks that were volunteering before the pandemic that would like to come back in now, there's a contact at each institution that they can reach out to in order to start that application process and see what actually makes sense for that institution. But to answer your question, yes, that has started back up.
And let me say that we took the opportunity to, we hadn't had any volunteers, like Nicholas said, for 2 years. So that, that changes over time. And then we also evaluated our training for these folks. And we took the opportunity to revamp all of that, and again, the process. And so, like Nick said, there's varying degrees of the religious happening at each institution now. It just depends how far along the people have volunteered, if they've been vetted, if they've done what we've asked them to do. Some institutions are having some in-person, others don't have the ability to do that right now, but they're allowing virtual or even video. So there's varying degrees, but we know how important that is. And next up, when we finish the religious volunteers, we'll start looking at the other volunteers as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing that, after just being down 2 years, how difficult, everything's much harder now. I don't know why, but we've been working very hard on this whole volunteer process.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Any other comments? All right.
Sure, Liz, before you finish, we actually did have a comment coming through the live stream. It's fairly long, so I don't know if you want to read it off, but I just want you to be aware that we will, these archive after the meeting finishes. So we could go in and actually respond to that.
Can you send that comment to the board then?
Yeah, we can
Great.
certainly send that. once-
I would appreciate
Yeah.
seeing it.
Absolutely.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Someone second it?
Thank you. A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And we will adjourn the October meeting and hope to see you next month at IMCC. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. See you, Larry.
See you later, Larry.
I'm just gonna say.